welcome back to section 11.3. The next thing we're going to do is practice using the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. So the first example I have is 4y squared minus 11y minus 3 equals 0. This one is already in standard form. You'll notice that my exponents are in descending order and all of my terms are on the same side. So from here, it's pretty easy to find those a, b, and c values that we're going to use in the quadratic formula. The coefficient for the y squared is 4, so my a value is 4. The coefficient for my y is a negative 11, since it's minus 11, so my b value is negative 11. And our constant here at the end is minus 3, so negative 3. So there's your c value of negative 3. Okay? Just to remind everybody, the quadratic formula, x equals, but in this case our variable is y, so we're going to change that to y equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? So from here, we're just going to substitute our values in. Okay? So the opposite of b would be the opposite of negative 11, which is positive 11, plus or minus the square root. Then I've got b squared, so negative 11 squared is negative 11 times negative 11, which is positive 121, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 3, all over 2a, so 2 times 4. Okay? Let's go ahead and do some of this multiplication so we can simplify. So I've got 11 plus or minus the square root. So we've got 121 minus, if I do 4 times 4, I get 16. And then 16 times 3 is 48. And then that'll become a negative 48. And we're going to minus a negative, which is the same thing as adding a positive 48. In the denominator, 2 times 4 is 8. I can simplify a little bit more by adding my terms underneath by square root. So now I have 11 plus or minus the square root of, if I do 121 plus 48, 8 plus 1 is 9, 4 plus 2 is 6, and 100 plus no hundreds is 100. And it's still all over 8. Okay, we've got 169. And that's actually a perfect square. That's 13. So we have 11 plus or minus 13 over 8. And since we have a nice pretty number, we can actually separate those and get two nice pretty answers. I'm going to have 11 plus the square root of plus 13 over 8. Or we could do 11 minus 13 over 8. And that gives us our two answer choices. The plus or minus literally means plus or minus. Okay, we can separate them out. 11 plus 13 is 24, and 24 divided by 8 would be 3. 11 minus 13 is negative 2, and negative 2 divided by 8 just simplifies as negative 1/4. So we can get two nice rational answers, which are 3 and negative 1/4 for that first one. The second one, you'll notice it's not in standard form, so it's hard to figure out what those a, b, and c values are in this format of x plus 5 times x plus 1 equals 10x. So that's going to be our first step, is to get it in standard form so that we can figure out what those a, b, and c values are. So I'm going to distribute x times x is x squared, x times 1 is 1x, 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 1 is 5. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 10x from both sides so that it equals 0 and we have it in standard form. Now I've got an x squared with all of my x's. X plus 5x is 6x. 6x minus 10x would be negative 4x. And then we have a plus 5 equals 0. Now we're finally in standard form. So the coefficient for my x squared, you're like, there's not a number there. That means it's a 1. 1x squared is the same thing as an x squared. So my a value is 1. My middle term has a negative 4x, so my b value is negative 4. My coefficient, or my constant at the end is a positive 5, so my c value is 5. And just reminding you, we'll have our quadratic formula, x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? So let's go ahead and substitute our values in and see how this works out. First thing I have is the opposite of b. Well, the opposite of negative 4 would be positive 4. Plus or minus the square root. We have b squared, that's negative 4 squared, that's negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 5. And it's all over 2a, so that's 2 times 1. Let's keep going with simplifying. So inside the square roots, I'm going to do multiplication before I do subtraction. I'm going to follow order of operations. So 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. So now I really got 16 minus 20. And then I can also do 2 times 1 is 2 while I'm on that multiplication step. All right, now I can go ahead and subtract inside of the square root. 16 minus 20 is negative 4. So when I take the square root of a negative, you say, that's not a real number. I know it's not a real number. It's an imaginary number. But remember that we can take that negative out as an I. And the square root of 4 is 2. So the square root of negative 4 would be 2i. We still have a 4 plus or minus, and it's all over 2. Okay? From here, I can go ahead and simplify because everything is divisible by 2. I can do 4 divided by 2 and get 2. Oops. Plus or minus 2i divided by 2 would be 1i, or just I. So those are your answers as 2 plus I or 2 minus I. Now it's your turn. You get to try one and show me how much you've learned.